Hello, Mary. Nice to virtually meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
So I'm speaking with Mary Teegee today about the latest documentary, For Love. But before we get into sort of details of the film and why you've put your name behind it, tell us a little bit about yourself for those around Canada and elsewhere that are not familiar with your work.
Okay, my name is Mary Teegee. I come from Takla Nation in North Central BC. I am Gikson and Carrier. My hereditary chief's name is Mausham Gabu, which is White Wolf. I am the Executive Director of Child and Family Services at Carrier Shikani Family Services. I also am the President of the BC Aboriginal Child Care Society. I also sit on the First Nations Caring Society representing BC, and that of course is led by the indomitable Cindy Blackstock. And I'm also on the National Advisory Committee for long-term child and family reform. So that's some of the stuff I do, but I'm also a producer and writer of this film and the executive producer of Highway of Tears.
That's right. So that's where I came across your name first with the Highway of Tears documentary. So I understand that you worked with the same director for this documentary, For Love. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship and how this documentary, For Love, sort of came to be your next project?
Well, I think it was really important so Matt really led the Highway of Tears and then, brought me in later, and we just had such a good working relationship. But what I know of Matt is that he really digs down, and he's really like, I call him always my brother from another mother. Like, he definitely's got our Indian heart. And it was really important because we know the stories and you live it, you breathe it. I had been advocating for missing murdered women, since I was in my late teens. So because you know it so well, sometimes the world doesn't know it. So Matt was really good to say, well, Mary, not everybody knows that. You need to explain that, or we need to do this. So, even in the editing of Highway of Tears and also sometimes it's too complex, it's so big issues. So really just to make sure that the common man, if you will, would understand it. So that was a really good collaboration, but he also really captured the spirit of our people in that film. So when I proposed this film, I had stated that I would only do it if I would have Matt as the director.
Very nice. So I know For Love also covers a big theme, which is, the history of colonialism and residential schools and the resilience of Indigenous peoples across this country called Canada. So in dealing with such a heavy and big theme, one that we need to talk about more, how do you narrow down the focus? Because I don't want to give a lot away. I want people to actually watch this film, but you do travel across this country and we get to meet a lot of interesting people. But where did that sort of come about? It's, in terms of that big theme.
Well, really the intent of the movie was really to showcase, culture as healing, culture as prevention, and keeping children and families together. In fact, all our preventative medicine has to be based in our culture. So I thought it was really important that, that we showcase across Canada to show that culture is still very much alive. But really, again, it's really a message of love to our children that are in care, to say, look, this is what you're a part of. You belong to us, and we still have our culture, be proud of who you are, right? Because we have a right to. And so it was really trying to couch the negative history of our people, the negative history of Canada, I should say. Yes. And so that they need to know that it wasn't their fault, that, everything that happened with our families being ripped apart was from a bigger machine. It was systematic. It was it was, very, very intentional. And so it was something bigger than that, even their families or even us, we could tackle on our own. So understanding that it wasn't their fault, understanding, it didn't matter what happened, we still have our culture, the resilience. So it was really important for me that regardless of where a child was residing, that they could see themselves in this film. And that's why we chose to go across Canada. So we actually did, I think it was 16 flights in 18 days.
Oh, wow.
Never again.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And so I like how you start with an elder. I'm going to call him an elder. He's, you know, an older person who was in residential school, but you also sort of introduce us to the other generation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I got attached to a few people, especially the Batosh siblings, of course. So, you know, how do you kind of find that balance? And I guess this is after you've done all this filming and meeting all these folks, of how the narrative will start and end for the film.
It's difficult. And the added difficulty too was that, you know, I wasn't able to sit in the physical editing room with Matt and with the editors. So because of COVID, right? So we couldn't leave, and we actually we were planning on going to the Yukon and Northwest Territories. We were actually, you know, literally then COVID hit. I was up in Nunavut in February, and I could see the international news, and I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna be done. Like we're gonna be stopped. And everybody's like, no, you're not. I said, no, I think we're not gonna be able to travel, because I could see the international news coming. And sure enough, you know, we land in Vancouver. You know, I had a meeting in Vancouver in March, and then boom, we were locked down. So everything kind of stopped. But the stories, like there were so many beautiful stories. Like we have so much footage, and it was just the honor that they would share their stories with me. But it was really to try to balance, you know, like telling the history, not pounding it over everybody's head, and then and just picking some of those stories, because ideally I would have loved to have everybody in there, but that's what we were trying to do. Really what stories resonated. And we had like a wonderful team of people that kind of looked at some of the edits, and, you know, we had to cut, and a lot of times I was angry that we had to cut that, and I was, oh no, you got to put it back in. And there was this, you know, this collaborative thing. But what was really good, I think, was that when the people that were watching it, we wanted an international audience. It was different than it was going to be just for our people, right? It would be totally different. But I really had to listen to them, because they said, no, Mary, nobody's going to care about that. Like the hard fact. That doesn't resonate. We don't feel anything for that situation or whatever, right? So it was really trying not to sensationalize everything, and doing it in a respectful manner. But it was not an easy process. Let me tell you, it was not an easy process. You know, Matt had wanted certain things in the film. I'm like, well, no, we're getting away from the story. We always had to touch base, because there's so many issues, like the environmental issues, the water issues, like all the stuff that we could have done many movies. And I always, especially Matt, I'm always having to, okay, this is our focus, right? You always had to remember, what are we doing this for? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm always curious about that process, especially with documentaries, because I understand it takes a lot of planning, a lot of time. And, you know, I can only imagine the amount of footage you had, you know, to work with. You know, I do want to highlight some sections of the film that I think are really notable for me personally, but it's also, I think, can sort of anybody can relate to in terms of community. You know, there is the Canoe family, and you know, the time when they go to this tribal journey, right? And this reconnecting with community and culture. Can you talk about what that was like to witness?
I just, you know, Kwame Lalem Child and Family Services, the executive director there is Bill Yoakum, and he was so supportive right away. He said, this is what we want to do, and he made it happen. But I got to tell you, so I actually wasn't at the canoe journey, because I was up in northern Saskatchewan. But what we did is that we were just starting to film then. And so they said, okay, well, it's Indian time, eh? They're going to tell us, okay, it's going to start in 2 days. So I'm like, what do you mean? We have no crew. So Matt, thank God, with his connections, we were able to get like the cinematographer out there, the sound guy, like literally within 2 days, and go on the journey.
Oh, wow.
But it fundamentally changed them. Like it just the spirit and everything that they got to witness, they were in tears that they actually got to film that and to be part of that. But I think that whole journey, like you look at Lori, I love her. She's my little girl. Just, you know, she embodies this film. She is why we did this film. You know, she, you know, is going through hard times, you know, being in care, and then just coming out as this strong, phenomenal warrior. It was just such an honor that we were able to capture that.
Yeah, and I know that, you know, the film is primarily for the younger generation, whether they've been in the system or not. And I don't want to focus on the system.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
What's the point? But it does have, it does resonate on different levels, you know, whether or not I'm an Indigenous person of this country or elsewhere. But you do see sort of these themes that come up because culture has not been, people were not allowed to practice their cultural
Exactly.
lives. So I'm wondering now that, you know, the film kind of has toured a little bit through the communities and it's now on this bigger platform of Netflix. You know, what was that response like first when, you know, initially you showed it to community and now we're getting into this bigger platform?
Well, I think for me, it was always about the community. We really wanted to take the film back to like Northern Athabasca. We wanted to go to all these places, but because of COVID, like we couldn't go. And you know, you couldn't have gatherings of this big. So when there was like pockets of time where we could gather, we showed it. Like for example, we went back to Nanaimo where the travel journeys, and it was standing room only. We had to turn people away. There were so many people, like so many non-Indigenous people. And I think we really, when I saw that, you know, we premiered it here in Vancouver on the first National Truth and Reconciliation Day. And it was, you know, the attendance, but what really struck me was how emotional the non-Indigenous people got. Like, of course, our people were really emotional, but just some of the good questions and the conversations it spurred on, I think was just amazing. But I think when we really intentionally wanted it to have that international type feeling because of the importance of getting education and awareness, reconciliation, of course, the first piece of the first step in reconciliation is truth telling, right?
Right.
Acknowledging. But I got to tell you this, people don't know this. So we weren't accepted into a few big film festivals because that was non-Indigenous.
Right.
And I said, how dare you, like as if I did not have myself have agency over it. Like I'm the producer, you know, we wrote it, we co-wrote it. Like, don't think that I was not a part of every step of the way. Like this is sort of, you know, a labor of love, but that we got by Canadian film festivals. They said, well, oh no, he's a non-Indigenous man. And I thought that was ridiculous because we are the embodiment of reconciliation. So that's why we actually did the premiere on our own. And we had amazing support, but yeah, now we're on the national or the national level, but then, you know, we still have the American Netflix and different other international platforms that we will be, we're in negotiations to distribute.
That's great, because I think this is also something that could be beneficial for education purposes anywhere outside of this country. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting anecdotal info.
I know I haven't said it publicly, but yeah.
No, but you know, it's good for people to understand that too, because like you said, you know, there is a level of reconciliation that needs to happen between cultures too, right? So I know I'm mindful of time, but you know, you also invited, or I don't know how it worked out, but Shania Twain became involved and in the project. Can you talk a little bit about her involvement?
Oh my goodness, it was such a coup to get her. You know, initially, right away, right off the top, we wanted a woman's voice, right? But we wanted a woman's voice that was sort of international, right? And I just never thought in a million years we'd get Shania Twain. So the first time I'm like, no, we wouldn't get her because she's huge internationally. And so then, okay, well, so who's got a really famous voice that's Canadian? Well, you know, Donald Sutherland's got a Canadian voice, and his son, Kiefer Sutherland, they're very well-known voices. So we talked about that for a while, and we were actually going to get Kiefer, and it just turned out that you know, things didn't work out at the very end, which was a godsend. And I just came back and said, Matt, you know, let's go to let's see if we can get Shania. And Matt's like, I'm on it. And that man is an energizer bunny. Literally within 2 days. He managed, because she's got like 4 managers. She's got this whole team around her, and even to get in to talk to her, and she agreed right away. But what's really beautiful about this story is that you know, people know about now that the documentary on her, that she did lose her voice. She had, you know, a lot of physical difficulties, a lot of emotional stuff. So this was her actually first time out after all of that using her voice. And then she got ready for the Vegas residency. So it's such an honor that, you know, she shared that. And so when I actually physically met her a couple of weeks ago, she's such a gracious woman. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mary. You know, my voice wasn't that great. And I'm like, oh, no. It was beautiful. Like it lent something to the film, you know. But people, even that, I'm going to tell you, I got backlash. They're like, well, she's trying to say she's Indian and she's not. And I'm saying she has never, ever claimed to be. Her stepfather, who she called her dad, she never called him my stepdad, was Indigenous. So she is status. And she has her brothers that are, that are full stat, and they're very dark. And she, when her parents passed away, she took care of those boys. Otherwise, God only knows what would have happened to them, right? So yeah, she's quite a phenomenal woman. And I think it was just the right voice for this film.
Yeah, and it's also lived experience, which also kind of helps, kind of put her in that place also.
Yeah.
Like, her, now that you're telling me about her experience too, makes more sense. So you talked about, the film hopefully having more platforms across different countries on Netflix. For anybody else who might be curious for educational purposes, is this a film that you're also hoping will make it into classrooms, for example?
We get so many requests, not only in Canada but in the States. So we are working on some of deals like for that, because we definitely want it to be in the classroom. We've shown it at various different universities. We've been invited to go to Oxford University, and I think we're going to be doing that in the next month and a half. We were, we showed it in Berlin. And it's the different universities that are so intrigued, and they want it for their curriculum, which I'm just so happy. I'm so happy. It was more than I'd ever thought.
Excellent. So the cycle continues, which is great.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mary. It's such a pleasure to meet you and speak with you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll meet in person one day. Thank you.
I hope so.
Oh yeah, I'll be in Toronto next week.
Okay, we should make it happen.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.